That summer, the creek behind the old mill glittered like a coin dropped in sunlight, and the world felt larger than the village, as if the map had been unfolded and left to dry in the heat. I was 9, toes pink with dust from the road, the kind of barefoot that learned to know every rock by its edge and every weed by the way it bent toward the sun. The air carried the scent of peaches from Mrs. Dyer's orchard and a faint sting of smoke from the bakery, where the crusts were still warm long after the ovens closed. The days lay long and tender, a soft yellow light that never hurried, the way afternoons do when you've not yet learned to count the hours. On those days, Mr. Hale would come from his house at the edge of the orchard, the one with the small patch of bees that hummed like distant laughter. He wore a cap that was weathered to a soft grey, and a coat that always seemed a little too big, as if it waited for someone taller to fit inside. He spoke in a measured, careful way, as if words were coins and he wanted to spend them well. He had learned to read weather in the way a sailor reads a wave, with patience and attentiveness, as if the sea still spoke through him in the quiet mornings. The truth is, I did not know I was learning anything at all until that summer began to tilt the world on its hinges and show me how small the edges are, how much there is to listen to when you really listen. It started with a walk no plan, just the two of us, stepping down the dusty lane that ran along the meadow and toward the river, where willows dipped their fingers into the water as if stirring a quiet soup. At his side, I learned to notice. At his pace, I learned to wait. He spoke little, but when he did, the words landed softly, like pebbles dropped into a still pond. He carried with him a brass compass, old and dulled at the corners, the kind that had claimed a dozen sand-scratched maps and a dozen more boys' excuses to stray from home. He kept it in a small, worn pouch, the kind you forget you own until you touch it by accident and remember you once believed in directions that could save you. "Hold it out," he said once, and I did, my fingers slick with sun-warmed oil from the leather strap that kept the pouch closed. The needle shimmered under the ribbed glass, a green needle with a stubborn little tip that trembled when a dragonfly swept past or a bird cried out from the brush. It was not the compass that mattered so much as the moment of trust, his, mine, the world's. "We are going to walk to the old oak," he announced, as if this were the simplest adventure in the history of afternoons. The old oak stood where the path narrowed, a guardian tree that had watched generations of children sprint across the field and pretend they were ships crossing a wide blue sea. Its roots tangled with the stories of soil and rain, and its branches wore a shawl of memory. We moved along the path, and I listened to the ground, the way pebbles clink in a child's pocket when a knee bumps a stone. The soft sigh of the grass as it gave way beneath our shoes. The distant echo of laughter from the village square, where a bell would ring for a girl who had learned to ride a bicycle that summer. The air tasted of warm sage and something sweet-sour that came from the field beyond the river, where the corn grew tall enough to hold a boy's secrets. Mr. Hale's voice, when it came, was low and kind and careful about every word. "A compass hums with what you want to do," he said, not looking at me, but at something far beyond the hedgerows. "But your feet know the road, even when the needle forgets. You listen with both heart and ankles." We stopped by the stream that threaded through the meadow, the water bright as a ribbon laid out for a wedding, then threaded into the willows where dragonflies skimmed like bright coins tossed into the air. He told stories of weathered ships and quiet harbours, of mornings when the sea wore a pale sunrise like a shawl. and of evenings when the tide would pull the villa's shutters tight and dream someone's name in the salt air. I listened because the world seemed to want me to hear, not because I cared to remember every syllable. Still, I did proof that a memory begins long before it becomes a memory. The compass in his palm felt heavy with history. He pressed it into my— "You see," he said, "the needle points where you think you should go, but the road is the teacher. It teaches you patience, attention, and gentleness toward others who travel with you or behind you or beside you." It was not a sermon so much as a quiet invitation to notice what was missing when you did not look, to notice how a person's presence can add a direction to your life that a map never could. That summer did not last long enough to be a memory. And perhaps that is why it stayed with me all these years, because it was a hinge between who I was and who I would become. A hinge that swung with the rhythm of the river and the careful cadence of Mr. Hale's breath. A hinge that taught me to measure my steps, not by impatience, but by a dozen patient glances toward the sky, toward my feet, toward the hand of someone who believed I could be more than a child who wandered. For days after the walk, the compass rested on my dresser like a small star, its brass edge catching the morning light and throwing it across the room in a lazy arc. I checked it once in a while when the house was quiet, and the clock on the mantel kept time with the soft tick of rain on the window. The needle always settled somewhere within me, not necessarily toward any literal direction, but toward a feeling, toward the idea that there was a way through a day if you attended to its small signals. A grandmother's voice calling from the kitchen, the ice in the glass clinking with a tiny twinkle of ice that promised something sweet, the way the milk hatched on the edge of the cup when you stirred. Mr. Hale left soon after, as if the sea had tugged him back toward its ordinary, inescapable longing. The orchard slept a little quieter that year, and the streetlight outside the bakery flickered with a kinder glow after dusk, as though it too remembered him. The world did not pause for his departure, yet the world did not forget him either. And in the months that followed, I found myself returning to the river in my mind, to the oak, to the moment when a compass learned to be a teacher, and a boy learned to listen, really listen, to the space between the leaf and the light. In time, the compass stopped being a thing and became a memory, a small, steady reminder that I carried with me through days that widened, darkened, and brightened in turn. Now, in old age, the river is a thread I follow through cities I did not know I would visit, through rooms filled with the memories of people I have loved and lost, through the moment of quiet discovery that comes when you realize your life has been a long, patient listening, more than a loud, brilliant doing. The compass sits somewhere on a desk in a house that smells faintly of wood polish and rain, its glass clouded by years, its brass dulled by the care of many hands that have refused to forget. Sometimes, when the house is still and evening leans against the window with the soft weight of a sigh, I lift the compass for a moment and let its needle rest on the thought of stern, kind Mr. Hale and the summer that taught me to walk softly with the world. The sound of the river drifts in again, a low, even murmur like a lullaby written by water. I remember the way the willows whispered to me of quiet courage, the way peaches tasted when the day cooled, the way a child's questions can be answered by a patient silence that says more than words ever could. Time has carried me far from that lane. Yet it has not taken from me the sense that direction can be found not only by asking where to go, but by learning how to listen while you go. I learned to ask questions, not to trap the answer in a neat bow, but to keep the curiosity that feeds kindness